The Moon Festival should have been the happiest night of Kayla's life. Instead, it became the night her own father handed her over like a peace offering. Every wolf in the valley believed the Alpha King wanted only one thing: a powerful Luna capable of giving birth to the long-awaited Moon Heir. Without that heir, the alliance of packs would fracture, rival alphas would go to war, and thousands would die. Kayla knew she was the worst possible choice. She had reached adulthood without ever shifting. No wolf, no moon mark, no blessing from the moon goddess. In every pack, that made her broken. Only her family knew the truth. Years earlier, a silver-bladed ambush had nearly killed her. Although she survived, the healers declared that whatever remained of her wolf had gone silent forever. Since then, Kayla had lived beneath whispers, pity, and quiet humiliation. Yet when the Alpha King demanded a bride to secure peace, her father chose her anyway. He believed Ronan Blackthorn would never discover the truth until the alliance was beyond undoing. Kayla entered the Alpha King's fortress expecting a monster. Instead, she found a ruler who defended Omegas from abuse, trained beside ordinary warriors, and carried loneliness behind every command. Falling in love was never part of the plan. Neither was becoming the center of a conspiracy that threatened to destroy every pack. And when Ronan finally whispered, "The moon chose you for me," Kayla's greatest fear wasn't rejection anymore. It was that the only man she had ever loved would discover she believed she could never give him the future he deserved. Chapter 1. The towering walls of Blackthorn Fortress stood against the mountains like an unmovable giant, their dark stone glowing beneath the pale afternoon sun. Massive banners embroidered with silver wolves swayed in the cold wind, announcing to every traveler that they had entered the domain of the Alpha King. Kayla tightened her grip on the reins of her horse. This was the place where her old life ended. Behind her, the small escort sent by her father slowed to a stop. None of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. The peace treaty had been signed, the alliance had been agreed upon, and she had become the final condition. Her father had called it a sacrifice for the future. Kayla called it surrender. She forced herself to breathe as the enormous gates groaned open. The guards standing on either side lowered their spears in greeting rather than hostility. "Welcome to Blackthorn Fortress, Lady Kayla." The greeting caught her off guard. She had expected cold stares, perhaps even open resentment. Instead, the guards bowed respectfully before allowing her to pass. The courtyard beyond was alive with activity. Warriors trained with wooden swords, while younger wolves sparred under the watchful eyes of instructors. Merchants unloaded carts filled with grain, herbs, and supplies. Children laughed as they raced between the buildings, completely unafraid, despite living inside the strongest fortress in the Allied territories. Nothing looked like a kingdom ruled by fear. An elderly wolf approached, leaning slightly on a carved wooden staff. "I am Elder Magnus," he said warmly. "His Majesty asked me to welcome you personally." Kayla offered a polite nod. "You honor me." "The journey must have been long." It was. "Your chambers have already been prepared." She followed him through the fortress, carefully observing everything around her. She had spent years hearing stories about Ronan Blackthorn, the ruthless Alpha King, the warrior who had never lost a battle, the leader whose name alone could silence rival alphas. She imagined a fortress where fear ruled every corner. Instead, she found order, respect, life. As they crossed the central courtyard, raised voices suddenly broke through the steady rhythm of the morning. An elderly Omega struggled beneath a basket overflowing with sacks of grain. His hands trembled under the weight. A young Beta standing nearby frowned impatiently. "You've delayed the kitchens again," he snapped. "If you can't carry your work, someone younger should take your place." The Omega lowered his head immediately. "My apologies." Before he could finish speaking, another voice interrupted. "That's enough." The courtyard fell silent. Every warrior straightened. Every conversation stopped. Kayla turned toward the voice. A tall man walked across the training grounds with calm, measured confidence. Dark leather armor rested comfortably across broad shoulders, while a heavy black fur cloak moved gently behind him. His black hair shifted with the wind, and sharp silver eyes calmly surveyed the courtyard. No one needed to announce who he was. The respect surrounding him said enough. Alpha King Ronan. The Beta immediately bowed. My Alpha. Ronan looked first at the elderly Omega, before turning his attention to the younger warrior. Tell me, he said quietly, what is the purpose of strength? The Beta hesitated. To protect the pack. And does the pack not include him? The question hung heavily in the air. The young warrior lowered his eyes. It does. Ronan nodded. Then never mistake someone's age for weakness. Every wolf who stands here helped build the home you now defend. His voice remained calm. He never shouted, yet every word carried undeniable authority. Without another comment, Ronan stepped forward and lifted the heavy basket from the Omega's tired arms. You've done enough for today. My Alpha, the old wolf whispered, clearly embarrassed. You've earned your rest. He handed the basket to two nearby warriors. Finish delivering these. They obeyed immediately. The elderly Omega's eyes shimmered with gratitude. Thank you. Ronan simply smiled before continuing on his way. Kayla remained frozen. That wasn't what she had expected. Where was the cruel ruler? The merciless Alpha, the man willing to sacrifice everything for power. She found none of them standing before her. Elder Magnus noticed her silence. Our Alpha believes respect is earned, he said softly. Kayla didn't answer. She wasn't ready to admit how wrong her expectations had been. They continued toward the keep, climbing broad stone steps until they entered the grand hall. Sunlight streamed through towering windows, illuminating polished floors carved with wolves beneath a full moon. It was beautiful, far more welcoming than any fortress she had imagined. Then footsteps echoed through the hall. Kayla looked up. Ronan had entered from the opposite corridor. For the first time, their eyes met. The world seemed to disappear. The sounds around them faded into distant echoes. Kayla felt something strange stir inside her chest. Warm, gentle, unfamiliar. It wasn't attraction, not exactly. It felt like recognition. Across the hall, Ronan slowed almost imperceptibly. His steady expression shifted with quiet surprise. For one impossible heartbeat, he simply looked at her, as though seeing someone he had unknowingly been searching for. Neither spoke. Neither understood why looking away suddenly felt impossible. Then Ronan inclined his head respectfully. Lady Kayla. His deep voice broke the silence. I hope your journey was without hardship. She struggled to find her own voice. It was manageable. I trust Blackthorn will offer you the rest you deserve. There was no arrogance, no possessiveness, no cold inspection of the woman promised to him through politics. Only genuine courtesy. He offered another respectful nod before excusing himself. Duty calls. We'll speak again soon. With that, he walked toward the council chambers, disappearing behind heavy oak doors. Kayla watched until he was gone. Only then did she realize how fast her heart was beating. What was that? She whispered beneath her breath. She pressed a hand against her chest. No, it couldn't mean anything. It had to be exhaustion, the stress of leaving home, nothing more. That evening, she stood alone on the balcony outside her chamber. Below, Blackthorn Fortress glowed beneath hundreds of lanterns as wolves ended another peaceful day. She thought about the old Omega, about the children laughing without fear, about the Alpha King who had shown kindness where she had expected cruelty. Everything she believed about Ronan Blackthorn had begun to crack. But one truth remained unchanged. She looked toward the full moon hanging above the mountains. I cannot forget why I'm here, she whispered. No matter how honorable Ronan appeared, no matter how strangely familiar his presence felt, she carried a secret that could destroy everything. She had never awakened her wolf. If the Alpha King discovered the truth, the peace between their packs could shatter before it truly began. Drawing a slow breath, Kayla lifted her chin toward the moon. She would protect that secret, no matter what it cost her heart. Chapter 2. Morning arrived quietly over Blackthorn Fortress, painting the towering stone walls with golden light as the first rays of dawn slipped over the mountains. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine through the open windows of Kayla's chamber, stirring the sheer curtains beside her bed. She had barely slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the same image. Ronan lifting the heavy basket from the elderly Omega's trembling hands. The scene refused to leave her mind. It had been such a simple act, yet it had shattered years of stories she had believed without question. Unable to remain indoors, Kayla dressed and stepped into the fortress courtyard. The morning was already alive with activity. Blacksmiths hammered glowing steel, merchants arranged fresh produce beneath colorful canopies, and warriors filled the training grounds long before breakfast. Everything moved with discipline, not fear. She noticed something else almost immediately. Whenever Ronan passed through the courtyard, wolves greeted him naturally. Some bowed respectfully, others smiled. Children ran toward him without hesitation. No one flinched, no one lowered their eyes in terror. An energetic little boy nearly collided with Ronan while chasing a wooden wolf carved by the village carpenter. The child froze. Kayla expected the Alpha King to scold him. Instead, Ronan crouched to one knee, picked up the toy, and dusted it off before handing it back. "You nearly lost your fiercest hunter," he said with a smile. The boy laughed. "My mother says he's brave." "I believe her." The child grinned before racing away, waving excitedly over his shoulder. Ronan simply chuckled and continued walking. Kayla watched the exchange in silence. A ruler who could kneel before a child. That wasn't weakness. It was confidence. As she wandered deeper into the fortress, she found herself drawn toward the training grounds. Dozens of warriors sparred under the watchful eyes of instructors, their wooden practice swords striking together in rhythmic bursts. Ronan stood among them, not watching, training. He moved with controlled precision, matching each opponent's strength rather than overpowering them. When one young warrior stumbled and fell, Ronan immediately offered his hand instead of celebrating the victory. "Again," he encouraged, "you'll only improve by standing back up." The young wolf accepted the hand with renewed determination. "Yes, Alpha." Kayla found herself smiling before she realized it. "Impressive, isn't he?" The voice startled her. She turned to find Elder Magnus standing nearby. "He trains with them every week," the elder said. "He believes respect cannot be demanded from a distance." Kayla kept watching. "I was told he ruled through fear." Magnus smiled knowingly. "Many who have never met him believe that. Then why doesn't he correct them? Because reputation often prevents wars before they begin." His answer lingered in her thoughts, long after the elder walked away. Perhaps Ronan allowed the world to fear him, so his people never had to. The realization unsettled her more than she cared to admit. By midday, Kayla had become familiar enough with the fortress that she no longer needed guidance to find her way. She wandered into the infirmary, where healers moved calmly between rows of recovering patients. Warriors rested beside elderly wolves. Young pups shared the room with omegas. Everyone received the same care. One elderly healer noticed her curiosity. "Our Alpha insists no life is more valuable than another." Kayla looked around the room once more. In her father's pack, rank often determined who received help first. Here, compassion came before status. She couldn't deny what she was seeing. Everywhere she looked, Ronan's influence had shaped the fortress into something she had never imagined possible. The monster from the stories continued to disappear. The man remained. Not everyone welcomed her presence. From the balcony overlooking the training grounds, Gamma Commander Darius observed Kayla quietly. Tall and broad-shouldered, he carried himself with the alertness of someone who had spent his life anticipating danger. He had protected Ronan through wars, betrayals, and assassination attempts. Trust did not come easily, especially not toward the daughter of a rival Alpha. A fellow Gamma approached him. "You've been watching her for days. I'm studying her. You think she's a threat?" "I think she arrived carrying more than a peace treaty." The other Gamma frowned. "Our Alpha trusts her." "Our Alpha trusts too easily when his heart is involved." His companion remained silent. Darius continued watching Kayla below. She smiled politely at passing villagers. She thanked servants who opened doors. She carried herself with quiet dignity. It all seemed too careful, too controlled. People who carried no secrets rarely measured every word. "There is something she isn't telling us," Darius murmured, "and I intend to discover what it is." That evening, after most of the fortress had settled into peaceful routines, Darius entered the archive chambers beneath the keep. Ancient records lined the stone shelves. Marriage treaties, medical reports, letters exchanged between allied packs. He searched patiently until he found the documents delivered during the peace negotiations. Most contained routine information: family lineage, military history, diplomatic correspondence. Then one report caught his attention. A healer's record from many years earlier. Lady Kayla. Severe injuries sustained during childhood. Months of recovery. The remaining details had been deliberately removed. Darius stared at the missing pages. Someone had erased part of her history. His jaw tightened. People only hid records for one reason. Because the truth was dangerous. Carefully rolling the document closed, he slipped it back into its place. "No," he whispered to himself. "I'm not finished. If someone has hidden your past," his eyes hardened with quiet determination, "I'll uncover it." That night, Kayla stood once again upon the balcony outside her chamber. The moon bathed Blackthorn Fortress in silver light, while distant laughter drifted upward from the courtyard below. She thought about everything she had witnessed since arriving. The children, the warriors, the healers, the Omegas. Most of all, Ronan. Every day made it harder to believe the stories she had grown up hearing. Every act of kindness chipped away at the walls she had built around her heart. That frightened her, because the more she admired him, the more impossible her secret became. She closed her eyes and wrapped her arms around herself. "You must remember why you're here," she whispered. No matter how gentle Ronan proved to be, no matter how safe Blackthorn Fortress began to feel, she could never allow herself to forget the truth. The day Ronan discovered she had never awakened her wolf, everything between them might disappear as quickly as it had begun. Chapter 3. The news of the welcoming ceremony spread through Blackthorn Fortress long before sunrise. By tradition, every future lunar was presented before the moon shrine, where the elders offered prayers for peace, unity, and the blessing of the moon goddess. It was an ancient custom, one observed for generations whenever an alliance shaped the future of the Pax. For Kayla, it felt less like a celebration and more like another reminder of the deception she carried. She stood before the mirror in her chamber, smoothing the folds of a simple silver gown, prepared by the attendants. It was elegant without being extravagant, woven with delicate threads that shimmered softly whenever they caught the light. She barely noticed its beauty. Her thoughts remained fixed on the same fear that had followed her since crossing the gates of Blackthorn Fortress. If only they knew. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "The elders are waiting, my lady," a servant announced. Kayla drew a slow breath. "I'm coming." The path leading to the moon shrine wound through towering pine trees before climbing toward a cliff overlooking the valley. At its highest point stood a circle of white stone columns surrounding an ancient altar that had weathered countless seasons beneath the open sky. Dozens of wolves had already gathered. Warriors stood beside healers. Children remained unusually quiet. Even the elders carried themselves with solemn respect. As Kayla approached, the conversations gradually faded. Every eye turned toward her. Moments later, another hush settled over the gathering. Ronan had arrived. Dressed in dark ceremonial robes trimmed with black fur, he looked every bit the Alpha King the stories described. Yet there was nothing cold in his expression. When his eyes met Kayla's, he offered the same small, reassuring smile he always did. Strangely, it eased her nerves. Elder Magnus stepped forward. "Today, we ask the moon goddess to bless this union of peace between our packs." His voice echoed gently across the mountains. "May old wounds begin to heal." The gathered wolves bowed their heads. Kayla and Ronan stepped toward the ancient altar together. "The custom is simple," Elder Magnus continued. "Place your hands upon the sacred stone as a symbol of trust between your packs." Kayla nodded quietly. She looked across the altar. Ronan met her gaze. "You don't have to be nervous," he said softly, so only she could hear. "I'm trying not to be." His smile deepened ever so slightly. "I've discovered you're braver than you believe." The unexpected words warmed her heart. Before she could respond, they both reached toward the altar. Their fingertips touched the stone at the exact same moment. A sudden breeze swept through the shrine. It circled them once, lifting Kayla's hair as though the wind itself had awakened from sleep. The air grew strangely still. Then, an invisible pulse spread outward from the altar. Not violent, not frightening. Simply powerful. Every wolf present felt it. Several elders instinctively looked toward the sky. Others stared at the altar in stunned silence. Kayla gasped. Warmth spread through her chest again. The same unfamiliar feeling she had experienced the first time she looked into Ronan's eyes, only stronger. Across from her, Ronan stood perfectly still. He felt it too. Neither moved, neither spoke. For one suspended heartbeat, it seemed as though the rest of the world had disappeared. Only the two of them remained. Then the wind faded. Everything returned to normal. The silence that followed was almost overwhelming. Elder Magnus slowly lowered his hands. For the first time since Kayla had met him, the elder seemed unable to find words. The other elders exchanged bewildered glances. One quietly whispered, "Did everyone feel that?" Several nodded. "I've never witnessed anything like it." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. What happened? Was that the moon goddess? Did the shrine respond? No one has ever spoken of this before. Kayla immediately stepped away from the altar. Her heartbeat pounded so loudly, she barely heard the voices around her. She couldn't explain what had happened. She only knew how it had felt. Safe. Comforting. As though standing beside Ronan was the most natural place in the world. The thought terrified her. Elder Magnus finally cleared his throat. "The ceremony is complete." His words sounded unusually uncertain. "You are all dismissed." The crowd slowly dispersed, but the whispers only grew louder. As Kayla descended the stone steps leading away from the shrine, fragments of conversation drifted toward her. The moon goddess has chosen them. It must have been a blessing. They're destined. No wonder the alpha looks different around her. Kayla stopped walking. Chosen? Destined? No. They were mistaken. They had to be. She hurried away before anyone could speak to her. The cool mountain air did little to calm her racing thoughts. How could the moon goddess possibly choose her? She had never awakened her wolf. She had spent years believing she was incomplete, broken. The idea was impossible. By the time she reached a quiet overlook beyond the shrine, she could no longer hold back the tears gathering in her eyes. "It isn't real," she whispered. "It can't be." She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, where the strange warmth still lingered. "This is only coincidence." She repeated the words again and again, yet the feeling refused to disappear. Back at the shrine, Ronan remained behind after the others had left. He looked toward the path Kayla had taken. The mysterious sensation still echoed through him. He had never experienced anything like it. Not in battle, not during ceremonies, not in all his years as Alpha King. He didn't understand it. But one truth had become impossible to ignore. Whenever Kayla was near, the world somehow felt quieter, lighter, as if a burden he had carried alone for years had suddenly become easier to bear. A faint smile crossed his face before he caught himself. "What are you doing to me?" he murmured softly. Not far away, hidden among the towering pines, Gamma Commander Darius watched the last of the gathering disappear. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Everyone else seemed excited. Lady Kayla had looked frightened. That was the detail he couldn't ignore. Most wolves would have welcomed such attention from the moon goddess. Instead, she had looked as though she wished the moment had never happened. Darius folded his arms. "There it is," he whispered. "The secret you're trying so hard to hide." Far below, Kayla stood alone beneath the endless sky, staring at the moon, beginning to rise above the mountains. The whispers still echoed in her ears. Chosen, destined. She slowly shook her head. No matter what the elders believed, no matter what her own heart desperately wanted to believe, she could never allow herself to hope, because hope would only make the truth more painful when it finally came to light. Chapter 4. Several days passed after the ceremony at the moon shrine, yet the strange moment remained the quiet topic of every conversation inside Blackthorn Fortress. Whenever Kayla crossed the courtyard, whispers followed behind her. Some believed the moon goddess had blessed the peace between the two packs. Others believed something far greater had happened. Kayla refused to listen. The more she heard those rumors, the more impossible they seemed. She had spent years believing she was the one woman the moon goddess had overlooked. How could destiny possibly choose someone whose wolf had never awakened? Determined to escape the endless whispers, she wandered toward the western cliffs overlooking the valley. The morning breeze carried the scent of pine through the mountains, and far below, scattered villages rested peacefully beneath the protection of Blackthorn Fortress. She found Ronan standing alone near the edge of the cliff. He didn't turn immediately. "I thought you might come here," he said with a faint smile. "You knew? I've learned you like quiet places." The simple observation caught her off guard. He had been paying attention. Kayla stepped beside him, allowing the silence to settle between them. It was no longer uncomfortable. Somehow, silence around Ronan felt easier than conversation with anyone else. Together they watched farmers working distant fields while smoke curled gently from stone cottages. "It's beautiful," Kayla whispered. "It wasn't always." She looked at him. Ronan rested his forearms against the stone railing. "When I was a child, those villages were empty." His voice grew quieter. "The wars destroyed nearly everything." He pointed toward the valley. "My father spent most of his life defending these lands. And you? I've spent mine trying to make sure they never have to see another war." Kayla listened carefully. There was no pride in his voice, only responsibility. "I used to believe strength meant winning battles," Ronan continued. "But every victory created another family that had lost someone." His silver eyes remained fixed on the horizon. "I don't want future generations to remember me for the wars I fought. What do you want them to remember?" A gentle smile crossed his face. "That they grew up in peace." The answer lingered between them. Kayla suddenly understood why the people of Blackthorn admired him so deeply. He wasn't fighting for glory. He was protecting a future he hoped others would enjoy. Ronan exhaled slowly. "Some days the responsibility feels heavier than I can carry." She looked at him in surprise. "You actually admit that?" He laughed softly. "Only to someone I trust." Those words settled gently inside her heart. Trust. No one had spoken that word to her in a very long time. He turned toward her. "I know this marriage began because of duty." She lowered her eyes. "But somewhere along the way," he paused, searching for the right words. "I stopped seeing duty." Kayla's breath caught. "I simply began seeing you." The wind seemed to disappear around them. For a long moment, she forgot every fear she carried. She forgot the whispers. She forgot the expectations. She only saw the sincerity in Ronan's eyes. He looked away toward the mountains once more. "I've spent years thinking about the future. The alliance. The packs. The children who deserve a better life than we had." His expression softened. "I've always dreamed of having a family that would never know war." Family. The word struck Kayla harder than any blade. A family, children, an heir. Everything he hoped for rested upon a future she believed she could never give him. Guilt wrapped tightly around her heart. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to confess everything before his dreams reached even higher. Instead, she forced herself to smile. "I think they'd be lucky." Ronan looked at her with quiet warmth. "I hope so." Without thinking, he reached for her hand. His touch was gentle, never demanding, never possessive. Kayla looked down at their joined hands. Why did something so simple feel so right? Because it shouldn't. Every heartbeat reminded her that she was allowing him to build hopes upon a future that might never exist. She slowly withdrew her hand. "I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I just—" She couldn't finish. Ronan nodded with understanding. "I won't rush you." His patience hurt almost as much as his kindness, because every reason she found to admire him became another reason to fear the truth. Elsewhere beneath the fortress, Gamma Commander Darius stood inside the archive chambers once again. Rows of ancient records surrounded him. Marriage treaties, military reports, family histories. Hours passed as he searched through documents connected to Kayla's childhood. Most revealed nothing unusual. Then his attention settled on a healer's report bearing her family seal. He carefully unrolled the aging parchment. The report confirmed what he had already discovered. Years earlier, Kayla had survived a brutal silver attack that nearly claimed her life. Months of treatment followed. Then, nothing. The remaining pages had been deliberately removed. Darius frowned. Someone hadn't merely misplaced the records. They had erased them. He searched every shelf for copies. There were none. His suspicion deepened. "What happened to you?" he murmured. Whatever truth those missing pages contained, someone had believed it important enough to hide. Rolling the parchment closed, Darius slipped it back into place. He would not confront Kayla, not yet. A secret buried for years would eventually surface on its own. All he needed was patience. That evening, Kayla stood alone on the balcony outside her chamber. The moon rose slowly above Blackthorn Fortress, bathing the ancient walls in silver light. She replayed every word Ronan had spoken. His dream of peace, his dream of family, his trust. Tears filled her eyes before she realized they were falling. She loved listening to him speak about tomorrow. Yet every tomorrow he imagined included a future she feared she could never give him. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty night. The apology drifted into the wind. Not for herself, for Ronan. Because every day she remained silent, she fell a little more deeply in love with the man whose heart she feared she would one day break. And with every passing sunrise, telling him the truth became a little more impossible. Chapter 5. The days that followed settled into a rhythm neither Kayla nor Ronan had expected. Morning often found them crossing paths in the fortress courtyard. Sometimes they shared breakfast before their responsibilities pulled them apart. Other times they simply walked the stone pathways overlooking the valley, speaking about everything and nothing at all. Without realizing it, they had become part of each other's days. For Kayla, Blackthorn Fortress no longer felt like a prison built from stone. It had begun to feel like home. She knew the names of the children who chased one another through the courtyards. The elderly Omegas insisted she join them for evening tea, filling the air with laughter and old stories. Warriors greeted her warmly whenever she passed, no longer seeing the daughter of an enemy alpha, but a woman trying to build peace alongside them. Every smile she received warmed her heart. Every kindness deepened her guilt. One afternoon, Ronan invited her to ride beyond the fortress walls. They followed a winding trail that climbed into the mountains until the fortress became a distant silhouette against the horizon. Around them, wildflowers swayed beneath the summer breeze, while streams of sunlight filtered through towering pine trees. Kayla drew a deep breath. "I never knew this place existed." Ronan smiled. "Few people come here." "Why?" "Because I like having one place where no one expects me to be Alpha King." She laughed softly. "And who are you here?" He looked across the valley before answering. "Just Ronan." The simplicity of his answer touched her more deeply than she expected. They continued walking until they reached a small clearing where a crystal stream flowed over smooth stones. Birds sang somewhere high among the branches, and the world seemed wonderfully quiet. Ronan sat upon a fallen tree and gestured for Kayla to join him. She did. For a while, they simply listened to the water flowing between the rocks. "I used to come here with my mother," Ronan said quietly. Kayla turned toward him. "She always believed the mountains reminded us how small our worries truly are." Was she right? He smiled faintly. "Not always." The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. "I lost both my parents before I was old enough to ask them half the questions I wanted answered. I'm sorry. So am I." Silence settled gently between them. "I think," Ronan continued, "that's why I've always dreamed of having a family." Kayla felt her heart tighten. "I don't want my children to wonder whether they were loved." He looked toward the stream. "I want them to grow up knowing peace, knowing laughter, knowing that no matter how difficult life becomes, they will never face it alone." Every word felt sincere. Every dream felt painfully beautiful. Kayla lowered her eyes. She wanted that future too. More than anything. She simply wasn't sure she could ever give it to him. Ronan noticed the sadness crossing her face. "What are you thinking?" She forced a small smile. "That whoever shares that future with you will be very fortunate." He studied her quietly. "I wasn't speaking about someone else." Her breath caught. "I was speaking about you." The words lingered in the gentle breeze between them. Kayla searched his face, hoping to find uncertainty. There was none. Only quiet honesty. "I don't know exactly when it happened," Ronan admitted. "Perhaps the first day you arrived. Perhaps at the shrine. Perhaps long before either of us understood it." He laughed softly at himself. "I only know that when you're near, this fortress feels less lonely." Kayla felt tears sting her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her as though she were enough. "I've spent years believing the moon goddess had forgotten me," Ronan continued. "But meeting you," he gently reached for her hand, "made me wonder if she was simply asking me to wait." Kayla's fingers trembled inside his. The warmth she had first felt at the moon shrine returned, wrapping around her heart with quiet certainty. She knew she should step away. She should tell him everything before another promise was made. Instead, she stepped closer. "I've been afraid," she whispered. "Of me?" She slowly shook her head. "Of what this means." Ronan lifted a hand and gently brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face. "You don't have to be afraid." His voice was barely above a whisper. We'll face whatever comes together. Together. The words shattered the last wall around her heart. Without thinking, she rested her forehead against his. For one long moment, neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The world beyond the clearing seemed to disappear. There was only the quiet sound of flowing water, and two hearts finally admitting what they had tried so hard to deny. Ronan slowly closed the distance between them. His kiss was gentle, unhurried, filled not with passion alone, but with promise. When they finally pulled apart, Kayla smiled through tears she hadn't realized were falling. I never thought this would happen. Neither did I. Ronan laughed quietly. I've led warriors into impossible battles, but somehow, telling you how I felt frightened me more than any of them. She laughed for the first time in days. The sound filled the clearing. Ronan smiled, as though it were the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. I think fate brought you here. He looked toward the endless mountains surrounding them. I don't believe peace was the only reason our paths crossed. His silver eyes returned to hers. I believe the moon goddess has given me my true Luna. The words stole the air from Kayla's lungs. True Luna, if only he knew. He continued speaking, completely unaware of the storm rising inside her. I find myself imagining tomorrow differently now. She remained silent, a home filled with laughter. He smiled. Children running through these mountains. Our family growing alongside the peace we've fought so hard to build. Each dream became another weight upon Kayla's heart. She wanted to tell him, right there, before hope carried him any further. The words rose to her lips, then disappeared. Fear won. Instead, she squeezed his hand and smiled through the guilt threatening to break her. I hope those dreams come true. I know they will, Ronan replied with complete certainty. As they rode back toward Blackthorn Fortress beneath the golden light of sunset, Ronan's heart had never felt lighter. Kayla's had never felt heavier. She had finally admitted she loved him, and in doing so, she had also accepted a painful truth. Every beautiful promise they had shared that day, every dream they had begun building together, rested upon the one secret she still could not bring herself to confess. Chapter 6. The happiness Kayla had found beside Ronan lingered long after their ride through the mountains. Every smile they shared, every quiet conversation, every promise whispered beneath the open sky. She carried those memories like precious treasures, returning to them whenever doubt tried to find its way into her heart. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that belonged to her instead of one chosen by duty. It was a dangerous dream, one she feared would disappear the moment Ronan learned the truth. The following morning, Blackthorn Fortress buzzed with excitement. Preparations were underway for a gathering of elders from neighboring packs, and warriors hurried through the courtyards carrying supplies, while servants decorated the great hall. Kayla wandered through the gardens, hoping to escape the noise. The flowers had begun to bloom beneath the summer sun, filling the air with a gentle fragrance that almost erased the weight pressing against her heart. Almost. Lady Kayla, she turned. Gamma Commander Darius stood a respectful distance away. His expression remained calm, revealing nothing. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. He glanced toward the fortress before speaking again. I wish to thank you. Kayla frowned slightly. For what? I haven't seen the Alpha smile this often in years. A faint warmth touched her cheeks. He deserves happiness. He does. His answer came without hesitation. He has carried the burden of every allied pack for far too long. They began walking slowly along the stone path winding through the gardens. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Then Darius sighed quietly. Sometimes I forget how young he still is. Kayla looked at him. I've watched Ronan sacrifice nearly everything for this alliance. His voice carried genuine admiration. Friends, sleep, peace of mind. He never complains. He simply keeps moving forward. Kayla smiled softly. That sounds like him. Darius nodded. There has always been one dream he refused to surrender. She already knew the answer. A family. Yes. His eyes remained fixed ahead. When the council urged him to marry, it wasn't simply because tradition demanded it. He paused. The united packs need stability. They need an heir. Kayla's smile slowly faded. Darius continued speaking, his tone thoughtful rather than accusing. Our enemies have waited years for a chance to divide us again. If something happened to Ronan without an heir, he let the sentence fade into silence. Kayla finished it herself. The alliance could fall apart. Exactly. They stopped beside a small fountain where sunlight danced across the water. Darius rested one hand upon the carved stone. Ronan has always understood that. He would never place his personal happiness above the future of the Pax. Kayla stared quietly at the rippling water. She remembered Ronan speaking about children, about building a peaceful home. At the time, his words had sounded like dreams. Now they sounded like responsibilities. Darius studied her expression carefully. "I believe he cares for you." Hope flickered inside her. Then he spoke again. "But caring for someone doesn't erase duty." The words struck her harder than she expected. He is Alpha King. Every decision he makes affects thousands of wolves. His voice softened. If the woman beside him cannot help secure the future of the alliance, he looked toward the fortress rising above the gardens. His heart may want one thing, but his crown may demand another. Kayla felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted. Darius hadn't accused Ronan of deception. He hadn't claimed Ronan was pretending. That somehow made the doubt even worse. Because what if both things were true? What if Ronan genuinely loved her, yet still needed someone capable of giving him an heir? Darius inclined his head politely. "Forgive me. I shouldn't burden you with matters of leadership." Without waiting for an answer, he quietly walked away, leaving Kayla alone with thoughts she could no longer silence. That evening, she found herself standing outside the great hall, where laughter drifted through the open doors. Inside, Ronan spoke warmly with the visiting elders. The smile on his face reached his eyes. She had come to love that smile. But now, every time one of the elders mentioned the future of the alliance, every time someone spoke about generations yet to come, she heard Darius's words again. His heart may want one thing. His crown may demand another. She turned away before anyone noticed her standing there. Later that night, Ronan found her overlooking the valley from the western balcony. The moon bathed the mountains in silver light. "You've been hiding from everyone," he said gently. "I needed some air." He joined her at the railing. For several moments, they simply admired the quiet landscape, stretching endlessly before them. Then Ronan noticed the sadness in her eyes. "Something has changed." She quickly shook her head. "No, you've hardly looked at me all evening." She forced a smile. "I'm just tired." He didn't believe her. "You know, you can tell me anything." Those words almost broke her resolve. Instead, another question escaped. If, she hesitated, if someone couldn't give you everything you hoped for. Ronan frowned. "What do you mean?" She searched desperately for the right words. "If the future didn't unfold the way you imagined." He considered her question carefully. "I've learned that life rarely follows our plans." "And your responsibilities?" She asked it so quietly, he almost missed it. "My responsibilities will always exist." His answer was honest. "They're part of who I am." Kayla lowered her eyes, exactly as she feared. Ronan gently reached for her hand. "But they don't decide who I care about." She wanted to believe him, with every piece of her heart, yet doubt had already found its place. Not because she questioned Ronan's love, but because she questioned whether love alone could stand against the weight of an entire kingdom. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles softly. "What is it you're so afraid of?" She looked into his eyes. The truth trembled on her lips. Tell him now." Instead, fear silenced her once again. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "of disappointing you." Ronan smiled with quiet certainty. "I don't believe you ever could." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made her chest ache. Because if he truly knew her secret, he might discover that disappointment was exactly what awaited them both. As the moon climbed higher above Blackthorn Fortress, Ronan stood beside the woman he loved, believing nothing had changed between them. Kayla stood beside the man she loved, terrified that everything already had. Chapter 7. Sleep abandoned Kayla long before dawn. She lay awake in the silence of her chamber, staring at the moonlight spilling across the stone floor. Every conversation she had shared with Ronan replayed inside her mind, like fragments of a beautiful dream she already knew she could never keep. His laughter, his gentle patience, the way he looked at her as though she were enough. Then Darius's words returned once more. His heart may want one thing, but his crown may demand another. Kayla closed her eyes. She had tried to convince herself those words were cruel manipulation. But the more she thought about them, the more she realized they carried an uncomfortable truth. Ronan was not simply the man she loved. He was Alpha King. Thousands depended on his decisions. The future of every allied pack rested upon his shoulders. If he remained with a Luna who could never give the Alliance the heir everyone expected, what would happen to the peace he had sacrificed so much to build? The answer terrified her. By sunrise, she had reached a decision that shattered her own heart. She would leave, not because she no longer loved Ronan, but because she loved him too much to become the reason his future collapsed. The fortress awakened as it always did, filled with the sounds of merchants, warriors, and children beginning another day. To everyone else, nothing had changed. Only Kayla carried the weight of goodbye. She spent the morning wandering through the familiar corridors, silently saying farewell to the life she had only just begun to embrace. The elderly Omega who had once welcomed her smiled as she passed. "You seem troubled today, my lady." She forced a smile. "I'm only tired. I hope our fortress has not disappointed you." Kayla felt tears threaten to rise. "No." She shook her head gently. "It has given me more kindness than I ever expected." The old wolf smiled warmly, before continuing on his way, unaware that his words had made leaving even harder. Later that afternoon, Ronan found Kayla in the gardens where they had shared so many quiet conversations. She stood with her back to him, watching autumn leaves drift across the stone paths. "You've been avoiding me." His voice was calm, not accusing, only concerned. Kayla didn't turn around immediately. "I've been busy. You've never hidden behind excuses before." She finally faced him. The kindness in his eyes nearly destroyed her resolve. "I think," her voice trembled, "we've allowed things to move too quickly." Confusion crossed Ronan's face. "What do you mean?" She lowered her gaze. "What happened between us?" It shouldn't have happened. The words hurt far more to speak than she had imagined. Ronan stared at her in stunned silence. "Is that truly how you feel?" No, it was the opposite. But she couldn't tell him that. She couldn't tell him she was trying to save him from a future filled with disappointment. "I think we forgot why I came here." His brow furrowed. "You came because our fathers chose peace." "Exactly." She swallowed painfully. Nothing more. For the first time since they had met, distance settled between them. Heavy, unnatural, painful. Ronan searched her face. "This isn't about peace." She remained silent. "Tell me what changed." She wanted to. Moon goddess. She wanted nothing more than to tell him everything. Instead, she took a slow step backward. "I think it would be best if we remembered our responsibilities." "Our responsibilities?" His voice carried quiet disbelief. "I thought we were building something together." Tears burned behind her eyes. "So did I." The words escaped before she could stop them. For a brief moment, hope returned to Ronan's expression. Then, she forced herself to continue. "But I was wrong." She turned before he could see the tears falling down her cheeks. "If you'll excuse me." She walked away. Every step felt like tearing away a piece of her own heart. Behind her, Ronan remained frozen. He didn't follow, not because he wanted to let her go, but because he couldn't understand what had just happened. Only yesterday she had looked at him with love. Today, she spoke as though she regretted ever letting him close. From the upper balcony overlooking the gardens, Darius watched the entire exchange. Beside him stood two trusted warriors. "She's pulling away," one of them observed. Darius nodded slowly. "Exactly as I expected. You think she'll leave?" "If she believes she's protecting him," he looked toward the path where Kayla had disappeared. "She will." The second warrior frowned. "And if she doesn't?" Darius's expression hardened. "Then we'll make certain the truth forces them apart." Neither warrior questioned him. They understood what was at stake. If Kayla carried a secret capable of threatening the future of the Alliance, waiting for chance was no longer an option. The truth would have to surface, one way or another. As evening settled over Blackthorn Fortress, Kayla quietly entered her chamber and closed the door behind her. She opened the small wooden chest that held the few belongings she had brought from home. Slowly, she began placing them back inside. A folded cloak, a silver hairpin that had belonged to her mother, a worn leather journal. Each item felt like another goodbye. She wasn't making plans anymore. She was preparing to leave. A single tear slipped onto the journal as she closed its cover. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the empty room. "I'm choosing your future over my own happiness." Outside her window, the fortress carried on as always, unaware that the woman they had welcomed as their future Luna had already decided to walk away. Across the courtyard, Ronan stood alone beneath the evening sky. He looked toward the window of Kayla's chamber. A single candle still burned. He couldn't understand why she had pushed him away. He only knew one thing with painful certainty. For the first time since she had entered Blackthorn Fortress, the silence between them no longer felt peaceful. It felt like the beginning of losing the woman he had already come to love. Chapter 8. A heavy silence settled over Blackthorn Fortress after Kayla's decision to distance herself from Ronan. Though they continued to fulfill their duties before the elders and warriors, the warmth that had once passed effortlessly between them had disappeared. Their conversations became polite, careful, and painfully brief. To everyone else, they appeared composed. Only they knew how much their hearts were breaking. Kayla had spent 2 sleepless nights, convincing herself she was doing the right thing. If Ronan eventually found a Luna worthy of giving the United Pax the heir they desperately needed, history would remember him as the Alpha who preserved peace. If she stayed, everything he had sacrificed could be lost. That thought gave her the strength to continue pretending she no longer loved him. It was a lie she repeated so often that she almost believed it herself. On the morning of the council gathering, Alphas, Betas, and elders from neighboring packs filled Blackthorn Fortress. The great hall echoed with discussions about trade, border security, and the growing stability between the allied territories. Kayla remained near the back of the hall, quietly observing the meeting. She avoided looking toward Ronan. He noticed anyway. Every few moments, his silver eyes drifted to her before returning to the discussions around him. He could face hostile alphas without fear, yet he still couldn't understand why the woman he loved suddenly treated him like a stranger. The uncertainty hurt more than any wound he had ever suffered. When the meeting finally ended, guests began filtering into the central courtyard, where a celebration had been prepared. Music filled the air. Children laughed between the stone walkways. For a brief moment, the fortress almost forgot the burdens carried by its leaders. Kayla stepped away from the crowd, grateful for the quiet. She paused beside an ancient fountain, watching the moon emblem carved into its center shimmer beneath the afternoon light. Behind her, footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn around. She recognized them instantly. "You're avoiding me again." Ronan's voice carried no anger, only sadness. Kayla kept her eyes on the fountain. "I thought we agreed this was best." "I never agreed." She closed her eyes. "Please, I don't understand." His words were almost a whisper. "If I've done something to hurt you, tell me." "You haven't. Then why are you pushing me away?" "Because I love you. Because I can't destroy your future. Because one day, you'll hate me." The answers filled her mind, but none reached her lips. "I just need time." Ronan stepped closer. "I'll give you all the time you ask for." The kindness in his voice nearly shattered her resolve. Then, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Instinct made Ronan turn. From the rooftop overlooking the courtyard, a masked figure released a silver-tipped arrow directly toward Kayla. Time seemed to stop. Several guards shouted warnings. Someone screamed. Kayla barely had time to react. Without hesitation, Ronan threw himself between her and the incoming arrow. The impact echoed through the courtyard. The silver tip buried itself deep into Ronan's shoulder. His body staggered from the force. Before anyone could process what had happened, more masked attackers emerged from surrounding rooftops. Chaos erupted. Warriors drew their weapons. Visitors rushed to shield the elders. Children were pulled to safety. Steel clashed against steel as Blackthorn's guards charged toward the assassins. But Kayla saw none of it. Her world had narrowed to one man. Ronan! She caught him before he collapsed completely. Blood stained the shoulder of his dark tunic, spreading quickly beneath her trembling hands. "No!" Her voice broke. "No! Please!" Ronan forced himself to remain standing despite the pain. His first instinct wasn't to look at his own wound. It was to search her face. "Are you hurt?" Kayla stared at him in disbelief. "You were struck by a silver arrow," I asked. His breathing grew uneven. "If you're all right." Fresh tears blurred her vision. "I'm fine." Relief softened his expression. "Good." Only then did his strength finally begin to fail. Kayla held him tightly as warriors surrounded them. "Healers!" someone shouted. "Protect the Alpha!" Gamma Commander Darius and his soldiers pursued the fleeing assassins while the remaining guards secured the courtyard. Within moments, the attackers disappeared beyond the fortress walls. The danger had passed, but Ronan had already made his choice. Inside the infirmary, healers worked quickly to remove the silver arrow. Kayla refused to leave. She stood beside Ronan's bed, her hands stained with his blood. Every painful memory of the past few days crashed down upon her. She had convinced herself Ronan's love was only part of his duty, that the future moon heir mattered more than she did. Yet when death raced toward them, he hadn't hesitated. He hadn't thought about the alliance, or prophecy, or the future. He had chosen her, without a second's hesitation. Hours later, Ronan slowly opened his eyes. The first face he saw was Kayla's. She was still there. Exhaustion lined her face, but relief flooded her eyes the moment he looked at her. "You stayed." She laughed softly through tears. "Of course I stayed." His weak smile returned. "I told you." His voice was barely audible. "You never had to face anything alone." Kayla lowered her head, unable to stop crying. She reached for his hand and held it carefully. "I'm sorry." The words escaped between quiet sobs. "I'm so sorry." Ronan gently squeezed her fingers despite the pain. "You don't have to apologize. But I pushed you away. I know." "I thought." She couldn't finish. He looked at her with the same warmth he always had. Whatever she had been trying to protect him from, whatever fear had lived inside her heart, none of it mattered in that moment. He had nearly lost his life, and still, the only thing that seemed to matter to him was that she was safe. Kayla realized then how wrong she had been. Love like this could never be forced. It could never be part of duty alone. It was real, completely, unselfishly. As she held Ronan's hand beneath the quiet glow of the infirmary lanterns, one truth became impossible to deny. The Alpha King had chosen her over his own life. And for the first time since arriving at Blackthorn Fortress, Kayla allowed herself to believe that perhaps his love had never depended on the future she feared she could not give him. Chapter 9. The first light of dawn never reached Ronan's chamber. Dark storm clouds had gathered above Blackthorn Fortress, casting long shadows across the fortress walls as rain beat steadily against the stone windows of the infirmary. Kayla had not moved from Ronan's bedside. Although he had awakened the night before, his strength had not returned. His skin remained pale. His breathing was uneven. Even holding her hand seemed to exhaust him. The smile he offered her was faint. "You should rest," he whispered. She gently shook her head. "I'll rest when you're well again." He gave a quiet laugh that quickly dissolved into a painful cough. The sound immediately drew the attention of the elder healers. Their expressions darkened. One of them carefully examined the wound on Ronan's shoulder before exchanging worried glances with the others. "The poison," the elder healer murmured. "It hasn't stopped." Kayla's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "We removed the silver arrow." The healer's voice was calm, but heavy. "But fragments of its poison have already reached his wolf." Silence filled the room. "Can you save him?" The elderly healer lowered his eyes. "We're trying, but ordinary medicine cannot heal a wound that's attacking the spirit itself." Kayla felt the blood drain from her face. She looked back at Ronan. He was trying to remain calm for her sake. Even now, he was comforting her with gentle smiles despite the pain slowly stealing his strength. "I'll be all right," he whispered. She wanted to believe him, more than anything. By nightfall, Ronan's condition had worsened. His fever burned hotter. His breathing became shallow. The silver veins spreading from the wound climbed slowly across his shoulder and neck. Every healer inside the fortress worked tirelessly. Nothing changed. Outside the infirmary, the elders gathered beneath flickering lanterns. "If the poison reaches his wolf completely," one elder fell silent. Another quietly finished the sentence. "The Alpha King will not survive." Kayla overheard every word. Her legs nearly gave way beneath her. She stepped back into Ronan's chamber and closed the door behind her. For a long time, she simply stood there looking at him. The strongest alpha she had ever known now looked frighteningly fragile. She slowly sat beside him. "I'm sorry." Her voice trembled. "I promised I wouldn't leave you." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "And now I might lose you anyway." She took his hand in both of hers. "If only I had trusted you sooner. I spent so much time believing I wasn't enough. I wasted so many days hiding from the man who loved me exactly as I was." Her tears fell onto their joined hands. "I love you, Ronan. I don't care what the future asks of us. I don't care whether I'm worthy of becoming Luna. I only want you to live." As the final words left her lips, a gentle warmth spread through her fingers. Kayla froze. The warmth grew stronger. It flowed from Ronan's hand into hers like a quiet heartbeat. Then another. The room became perfectly still. The rain outside stopped. Moonlight suddenly poured through the windows, despite the storm clouds that still covered the sky. Silver light surrounded both of them. The air shimmered. Kayla gasped as brilliant energy wrapped gently around her body. The same warmth she had felt at the moon shrine now filled every part of her soul. Deep within her, something answered. For the first time in her life, she heard it. A powerful wolf's howl echoed inside her heart. Not distant, not broken, alive. The silver light carried her into a place beyond the physical world. She stood once again beneath an endless silver sky where countless stars reflected across a peaceful valley bathed in moonlight. Before her stood the radiant moon goddess. Her robes flowed like liquid silver beneath the endless night. "You have carried fear for far too long." Kayla fell to her knees. "I believed my wolf died." The moon goddess smiled gently. "Your wolf never died. It slept, waiting for the heart destined to awaken it." Kayla looked up through tears. "Ronan, the bond between true mates cannot be created by ceremony. It cannot be forced by kings. It cannot be broken by fear." The moon goddess stepped closer. "The moment your souls recognized one another, the seal placed upon your wolf began to break." Kayla's voice trembled. "Then why was it sealed? So the world would choose your heart before your power." The answer filled every broken place inside her. You believed yourself unworthy. But destiny never judged you by your ability to shift. It judged you by the love you were willing to sacrifice. The moon goddess gently touched Kayla's forehead. A brilliant wave of silver light exploded around them. A magnificent white wolf emerged from the light behind Kayla. Powerful. Graceful. Its glowing silver eyes met hers with quiet affection. It had been there all along. Waiting. The valley disappeared. Kayla opened her eyes inside the infirmary. Silver light still surrounded her. Before the astonished healers could speak, the glowing energy flowed from her hands into Ronan's body. The silver veins covering his shoulder slowly began to disappear. Color returned to his face. His breathing steadied. The elder healer stared in disbelief. "The poison. It is leaving him." Ronan slowly opened his eyes. His silver gaze immediately found Kayla. This time, she smiled without fear, without shame. "I know the truth now." He gently reached for her face. "So do I." Moments later, hurried footsteps echoed through the corridors. Gamma Commander Darius entered the infirmary with several warriors escorting 3 wounded assassins in chains. "My Alpha." He bowed. "We found them hiding inside the northern caves." One of the prisoners laughed bitterly. "The Alliance was never supposed to survive." Another spat at the floor. "Her father sent us." The room fell silent. Kayla's eyes widened. "My father?" The assassin sneered. "He never trusted the peace. If the Alpha King died, and the rejected Omega took the blame, the packs would destroy one another." Darius lowered his head. "I was wrong to suspect you. My suspicion blinded me to the true enemy." Ronan slowly sat upright. "No more secrets. No more lies. The truth ends today. The following morning, the great hall filled with wolves from every allied pack. Standing beside Ronan, Kayla finally revealed everything. She spoke of the attack that had nearly taken her life as a child, of the years she believed her wolf had been lost forever, of the fear that had driven every decision she made. When she finished, Elder Magnus smiled warmly. The moon goddess has answered what we could not. He raised his staff toward the gathered wolves. Lady Kayla was never broken. She was chosen. One by one. Every warrior, every elder, every Omega, lowered their heads before their future Luna, not because she carried extraordinary power, but because she had carried extraordinary love. And at last, the truth set them all free. As the moon watched over Blackthorn Fortress, one truth became impossible to deny. The greatest battles are not always fought with claws or strength. Sometimes they are fought with trust, with forgiveness, with the courage to love even when your heart is terrified of being broken. Kayla believed she was unworthy because of what she lacked. Ronan loved her for who she was. And in the end, the moon goddess did not reward power, bloodlines, or perfection. She rewarded a heart that never stopped choosing love, even through fear and sacrifice. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. The people who believe they are broken are sometimes the very ones destined to change the world. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next unforgettable werewolf story. And before you go, tell us in the comments, at what moment did you realize Ronan truly loved Kayla? Or, if you were Kayla, would you have revealed your secret sooner or made the same choice she did? We'd love to read your thoughts. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.